my end.
No rush. Nice to meet you.
All right, great to meet you as well, Rosie. Is it Rosie? Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, that's right. Rosie Pye.
Okay,
That's my name.
Rosie Pye. All right, great, great. Thanks for taking time out for the interview today on behalf of LRM. I'd like to thank you first. And I'm excited to be able to talk to you today about extrasensory.
Oh, thanks for having me. Wonderful.
So what does it I guess the first question I'll put out there is what is the experience like from concept to production, having a or creating a project like this about the supernatural?
Yeah, it takes a long time to make shows like this. I think I started, I mean, it was years ago that I
Really?
that I became interested in the story. And I did the original journalism at the very beginning. I mean, I'm really interested as a journalist in people who have really left field beliefs, but who also take loads of action around their beliefs. So they go out into the world and tell people what they think. And I was interested in reincarnation. I found this story of the Pollock twins. And when I first saw it online, the first thing that comes up are these kind of creepy twins images, like the famous sort of mythological creepy twins. And I was thinking, wow, is
Yeah,
this
the,
the
the
kind of
duo.
yeah, and I was thinking, is this the kind of origin story of that myth? And um, and it took months of to find out anything really because there's so little journalism that had been done about it. Um,
Right.
and then I found out that this American professor had studied the family and that there were tons and tons of records of the interviews that he'd done um, with the family. So that then I was like, wow, this is a great story. We now know what was happening,
It's
and
fascinating.
I've never seen anything like it. It was one of the most extraordinary stories I'd ever seen as a journalist.
Wow, that's a great answer. That is very fascinating. Reincarnation.
Yeah, it's a big topic.
It
What
is.
happens after we die? Yeah,
What
we have.
makes the story of John Pollock's prophecy, what makes it so relevant and powerful for today's listeners?
Well, I think I mean, it's a central question for humanity, isn't
It's
it? And
reincarnation, right?
yeah, what happens after we die? Um, and it's something that the story is, it has a very strong plot. There's these two men, and there's lots of things that happen in their paths to trying to prove that reincarnation is real. But in the background of that is this big question, which is so personal to every listener, and so personal to me, and so personal to Will Sharp, who's the host of the show, of like what you believe happens. And so I think it's always going to be relevant, that question, until we have the answer of whether
That
reincarnation
is
is real.
correct. Right.
Um, so I'm hoping what people come away with is, that they're gripped by the story of this family, because it's a story of a family secret.
It's a big secret.
What happened to the twins and John Pollock became a family secret, and we reveal it in the series. Yeah, but also, hoping people come away, thinking about some of the bigger questions, and maybe some of their beliefs are challenged, or maybe they're open to new ideas after listening. And that's the mix that we wanted to have in the show.
That's fascinating. What was your experience working with Lauren Pollock like?
So, well, she's the granddaughter of the central character, who's John Pollock. So John Pollock is this man who, in the late 1950s in Northern England, two of his children get hit by a car and tragically die, his small children, these two girls. He makes this prophecy that they're going to be reborn, and it's all over the British press and then the international press. And the things that he prophesies start coming true. So that's essentially the story. So those two girls are Lauren Pollock's aunties. And when we approached Lauren, we found her because obviously we were trying to find the family who had disappeared. She knew very little about what had happened in her family, even though it's her own aunties that we're talking about. And John Pollock is her grandfather. So what had happened is she'd found out about the story in a religious studies class in her school when she was like in her early teens. It just popped up when they were talking about reincarnation
This
on the
story that
screen.
she's in.
Story, her own family story. She did not know it. So she saw a photo. They were watching a video about reincarnation. She saw a photo of her own family. She had no idea that her family had anything to do with reincarnation. So she goes home and she asks her mum and dad about it. And they basically sweep it under the carpet and don't give her any answers. And then years and years go by.
Right.
And then we phone her and we say, we're trying to find out what really happened with the Pollock twins. And she says, I want to know. So then we go on the journey together, the journalists in our team and Lauren, to try and figure it out. And she met people in her family who she didn't know as part of making this program, like close relatives,
Wow.
because the family, because of this big secret within it, had become fragmented.
It sounds like
And
the production took on a life of its own. I mean, it's going in a whole other, it's beyond journalism.
well, I think what's amazing about Lauren, and working with her on this, is that she is a spiritual person. So and it's her story to tell. This is her grandfather. So we're able to have all our journalistic work alongside a very personal story, which is full of her own beliefs about what happens when we die, and her own memories. And that's a really rare thing to have.
Interesting. That's fascinating. Let me ask you now, it sounds like it all came together. I mean, amazingly. I mean, you can say almost supernaturally, but what challenges did you face in presenting such a compelling real life story?
Challenges, I mean, I think getting the tone right is the hardest thing, because it's a spooky story and it deals with a tragedy at the start, and it's a tragedy all the way through, because at the end, two little girls died,
Right.
and everything that follows starts from that moment. I think what we wanted to do was, and was to bring, not just like, to bring a bit of humor into that storytelling. And that's one of the reasons why working with Will Sharp was so great, because he's a very funny person, but also, just to add a lightness, because there is a sort of silliness as well when you're when you're in this territory of
Yeah, I mean,
of
it's
spooky twins and
spooky
things like that.
stuff. Yeah, it's got some humor to it. It is serious though.
It is very serious, and but
But it's
it
best to
doesn't, we're British, so we love to not take ourselves too seriously all the time. So, and hopefully we do that. And also I wanted to make sure that this story could be told for everyone. You don't need to know
Sure.
anything about reincarnation. You don't need to know anything about really any back knowledge about British culture, about 1950s belief systems, because when all this happened, the world is changing, the West is changing, we're getting these new ideas. At the time that John Pollock was out there saying my kids are going to be reborn in all over the British press, people didn't know, lots of people wouldn't know what reincarnation is,
Okay,
because these ideas hadn't come to America and the UK yet. It was
sure.
just emerging. So we want to take people back to that world where, new ideas are flooding in, and people are, the set ways are
It's an
being
earlier
challenged.
time there with the
Yes,
it's way
early,
pre-internet, but
yeah,
it would have had to been word of mouth and
yeah.
that would have been like a concept reincarnation, I'm sure around the planet, but yeah, not the UK. So how did that's fascinating. This is a fascinating story here. And where can listeners go to? I mean, this is an Apple podcast and it is currently out, but is there any, can you tell us about that?
Well, it's how to listen to it. We made it with Apple TV. So you can, if you're an Apple TV subscriber, you can listen to the whole thing. on your Apple TV app, however you normally access your Apple shows. It's also widely available, and it's being released week by week on all the platforms. So you'll just on normal Apple, and also on Spotify. So it's wherever you get your podcast. But if you, yeah, and so
There's a
we'll
lot of
be,
options for the folks to get to be able to check this out.
yeah, and I hope they do
And it's
because
streaming now. And it would have been perfect for we just had the Halloween here in state
yeah,
spooky story.
yeah, and as winter's drawing in, people,
Definitely.
I certainly feel more introspective. So I'm interested in thinking about, you know, things differently now the summer's over and we're not
Sure.
we're not out partying all the time. And maybe in LA you are still out partying,
Oh,
but
I'm not in LA
oh
myself.
right, oh, okay. I'm sorry. I don't know why I
I'm
thought you
on
were.
the East Coast.
I think it's your background. I thought you're on the East Coast, okay. So you're
Oh
having winter.
yeah, the beach and everything. That's where
Yeah,
there are beaches around here. I'm near Virginia Beach, so but it
yeah,
doesn't
like
look
that.
like that right now.
You can see why I made an association. Um, yeah, so I think this time of year, thinking about bigger questions and hopefully it's the right time to be thinking about these things and to be just enjoying a great story because it will blow your mind. This story, what happened here, is completely wild that it actually happened.
I know it
um
will.
yeah, so I hope people enjoy it.
Oh yeah, I hope that our readers check it out and Rosie's explained where we can where they can find it and like with the winter coming, it's gonna be perfect to stay inside and get spooky, listen to Will Sharp and learn about reincarnation.
Yeah, hopefully. It's not, if you know Will Sharp from White Lotus, it's not very like White Lotus, but I think people will still love it.
Okay, I'm sure they will. And what was the process of collaborating with Apple and Blanchard House like on this project?
We've worked with Apple before. They're brilliant partners. They're very creative, creatively driven and talent driven. And obviously have a massive distribution possibility. I mean, I couldn't, it's fantastic. It's a transatlantic story. I'm a British journalist. We make a lot of programs aimed at the American market, and it felt like the perfect fit, because the two central characters, John Pollock is a British man, and the professor that studied the family is an American, and they're our central characters. So hopefully it feels like this sort of transatlantic world that we're in. And yeah, we could not be more delighted to be making programs alongside things like Disclaimer and, Severance and all the brilliant shows that Apple's making.
Great. All right. Well, it was fantastic to talk to you today, Rosie. And we'll have this out so that folks can check it out and learn about a fascinating story. This is very interesting.
Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I really thank you for your interest in it.
Yep.
Really
Thank you for
appreciate
your time.
it. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks, Vince.